With you and Michael Cood on set, how many things did actually go missing in the end?
Well, plaques used to get stolen all the time. Ship's plaques. We always had spare. Yeah. And
did they purposely have to keep a stockload of spares for that very reason?
Oh, absolutely. You had to, because people would, they disappear. I think that when we got to the Defiant Bridge on Deep Space Nine, we literally bolted it to the wall so it couldn't get stolen. You'd have to tear the whole wall out to get it, But up until then, they were just on with double-faced tape. There's nothing like a Starship Bridge. Well, it's actually tape made from Aldebaran silkworms. Did I say that?
I owe him $20, but
there's nothing like a Starship Bridge. And actually, I started to get off into Galactica a little bit. Enterprise was canceled. We found out on the internet. Nobody came up and told us. We knew that something was wrong in the last month or so because people were coming into the art department measuring shit that we never saw before. We're going, uh-oh. And then
like an undertaker
when the show,
coming in and measuring.
On the last day, on the day we got the word, I remember driving home pretty, depressed about it. And I'm thinking, wow, that's like 17 years straight on a show. That's probably the end of it for me. I'll never work again because that kind of luck is. And I got home, and there was a message on the answering machine, and I could hear it was Gary Hustle, and I knew he was doing visual effects on Galactica. And I went, oh my God, he's going to ask me to come to Galactica. And sure enough, that's what it was. I remember I called him up, and he says, I heard about Enterprise. And I go, yeah. And he says, but you know what? He says, every cloud has a silver lining. And I was like, oh, this is it. And I ended up going to Vancouver. I spent a year in Vancouver, and then we brought it down to L.A. But, see, we had Ron Moore on Galactica, and there was me and Gary, and there were a bunch of us from Star Trek. And to me, it was just a continuation of Star Trek. Galactica, incredibly sophisticated, incredible stuff. I mean, the thing, of course, about Galactica is that it's very dark, and no one ever has a good time on the Battlestar Galactica, Someone should blowing their brains out, and,
It was like an entire show of Chief O'Brien's.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Very dour.
Everybody must suffer.
Colin was a fixture. Came from his transporter room. And, Michael Dorn, I really was much, much closer to. Any of the actors, guys like Dorn and Frakes and Patrick Stewart, I knew quite well because I was a makeup artist with them.
You must have spent a lot of time with Michael Dorn.
I did. He's a riot. We had so much fun. He used to think that my name, he loved to say my name. He thought it was like a Klingon name. He'd go, Drexler! 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 Like that. And then it became a thing with him. If I came in the stage and he was all the way on the other end of the stage, he'd be yelling, Drexler! Drexler! All the way across the stage, Drexler! Finally, Ira Bear named Klingon Drex on Deep Space Nine, who I think Worf kills him. But his name was Drex. I had my own Klingon.
Me and Ronan were talking just before, and we've heard different things about your involvement with the design of ships and such. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that.
I really didn't get into designing ships too much until Enterprise.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. But I have to say, I didn't enjoy doing the ship of the week stuff. I did the Vulcan command ship and the NX and I should make a list of the stuff because it goes like right out of my head. But
you should put them all in a book and call it something like Ships of the Line, though, or.
I'm just finishing up the next Ships of the Line calendar. I think I was telling you that before.
Yeah, excellent.
It's going to be a good one. It's for the 50th anniversary, and it's all TOS. Paramount wanted all TOS.
Oh,
Do you know that TOS still outsells all of them? Let's see my NX. This is actually a copy of the one that was in the movie, the JJ movie that was on the desk. They made a copy of it for me. It's the only starship to survive both timelines.
Well, of course.
So I figure this ship has got to be the reason. it must have caused the rift, right? That's the reason why it's. But
Why do
but I
get
also
the
did
feeling
it.
you show that to people more than your Oscar?
You know, you're not really not far off.
Sure,
If I had a choice, I don't know which one I would take. You know, I did the NX refit, which Eagle Moss is coming out with in a couple of months. You know, where I put a secondary hull on the NX. As a matter of fact.
Yeah.
This is not the Eagle Moss, but this is actually a garage kit. It's the NX with a secondary hull if you haven't seen it.
Yeah. Beautiful, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Which is something that I always had in mind from the very beginning. And that when I was designing the NX, I used to stick a secondary hull under there just to make sure it looked right if we ever wanted to do it. Because one of the things about the NX that I wanted to get across, and most people didn't understand it till after the show was gone, it was a ship that was designed to show the evolutionary steps of a ship evolving towards the Constitution class. So I made sure there was a lot of Matt Jeffries' design in the NX. And when I was building it, I would have them together to make sure the dynamic was basically the same. The closer you look at the NX, the more detail there is on it without being cluttered, you know. It's not like, it doesn't have a lot of nurnies and stuff on it. But if you look close at it, like, you could pull right up to that airlock, and that airlock works, you know. And a lot of people didn't appreciate it when it came out. I'm finding the ship has a lot more fans now. That fans have had a chance to look at it and realize just how much love and attention and thought went into it. And then when they saw the movies, where the Enterprise was bigger than the Battlestar Galactica, and you know, I think that, I mean, honestly, there's some things I like about the Enterprise in the last two movies. There's a certain googie architecture quality to it that's swoopy and futuristic, which I kind of like. But things that I don't like about it is that I feel like the technology was never important. And that if you're okay with using a brewery for your engineering department, you're the kind of guy who doesn't really care about the detail on the ship. A guy like Gene Roddenberry, you know, was always concerned about the realism and how things function.
That was a bit of a cheap option.
Oh my God, I mean, you look forward to seeing what engineering looks like. Engineering is always cool. You do something cool in there. You don't let everybody down, you know, by having a brewery, but they did, because that type of stuff doesn't matter to them. It doesn't matter. In the era before the new movies, guys like when Rick Sternbach designed something, or I did, or John Eves, we knew that the fans would look at it and take it apart like a puzzle in their minds and say, oh, okay, I see how this comes off and this goes this way, and then that's part of the fun. But if you're not that kind of geek, you know, you're not a gearhead and you're not really into the tech, then it doesn't mean anything to you, you know. And I felt like the tech wasn't thought out carefully on the new movies, because I didn't. Listen, you know what they say: a fish stinks from the head. Not to say that J.J. Abrams stinks like a fish, but
it's part of the universe, and if you don't have every piece in the right place, then it affects the whole thing possibly.
That was always part of the charm of Star Trek, that it sweated those details. You know, look how much people love the tech manuals.
Yeah.
You know, when Mike did the TNG tech manual with Rick, and we did the Deep Space Nine, people like to think that it's really thought out, and that you really take it seriously.
You can imagine just like sitting in a shuttle and just looking into a cargo bay and going like, wow, wouldn't that be great to be able to do that?
yeah, and it was all thought out. Oh, no. Now, another favorite of mine.
I always hated that they put helmets on the Klingons.
Yeah.
Is that the second one?
Yeah.
I
think that was just a cheap move on the
All of the
one that I designed for Enterprise was the
the Vulcan
ship. And for me, when I did that design, there were the major ships with Starfleet which is almost all, they were usually saucers with nacelles, and they were all derived from one another. I remember when we first did the NX, the internet, you get a lot of trolls and people who just love to tear things down, and there were people who said, oh, they ripped off the Akira. They call it the Akira Prize and stuff like that. Well, yeah, that's true. We did have these, pontoon-like structures here, which did come from the Akira. But the whole design ethic of Starfleet vessels is that they are all derived from one another. Every single one comes from Matt Jeffries' original.
Sure, yeah.
That's what it's all about. You're supposed to. When you look at one, you can recognize it as being a Starfleet vessel. The same thing with the Klingon ships. Matt designed that first Klingon ship, and everything was more or less came off of that, all derived from each other. When Herman asked me to design a Vulcan ship, one is I wanted it to be inspired by something Matt Jeffries had done, because he had done the other two. So Matt had done a design that was an early Enterprise design that was a ring. And it showed up in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, and he almost used it in a show that didn't go for Roddenberry called Starship. And I said, okay, I'm going to use that ring as the gimmick to hang the Vulcan ship on. That way, it's a Matt Jeffries design concept, basically. And I wanted it to just be distinctively different. When you see a Klingon ship, even casual viewers know it's a Klingon ship. Even casual viewers know a Starfleet ship. Even casual. I mean, when you look at this, it's so different from the other ships.
Sure, yeah.
That are out there. It's very distinctive. You can't mistake it for something else. So I was always very proud of that one.
In the past year, haven't they? I don't know whether it was the European Space Agency or NASA, but it was basically a futurist kind of experiment.
Yes.
They did a picture of a concept of what an actual warp ship would look like, and lo and behold, big ring.
That's right.
Yes. Yeah. I can't remember the physicist's name. Sonny somebody at NASA. That was his, and he's a big Star Trek fan, by the way. And that blew our minds that they thought that a warp ship would have a ring on it because Matt was there 30 years ago, Matt Jeffries. The guy who built the ship. Well, the guy who built the ship was one of our Ships of the Line artists, and we actually used it in one of the Ships of the Line calendars. I don't think I have it here.
Yeah, Sonny White Dog.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have that one, although I do have. He did.
Oh yeah.
Oh, excellent.
Oops. That was Matt's design, which the guy who built that one for Sonny had done this for the Ships of the Line calendar.
Have you got any nice memories from DS9 to share with us?
Nice memories from DS9. Yes. When I was in my 20s, I was crashing. I went to the School of Visual Arts for 1 year, and friends of mine were going to NYU, and I crashed in their dormitory. I even forged identity papers and stuff that said I was an NYU student so I could get in. And we would we'd have nothing to do in the evenings, and I decided I was going to practice opening up a book of matches with my feet, pulling out a single match and lighting it. And that was my trick. I learned to do that.
And I told down here, Doug. I was going to ask you, do you have any matches there in the office?
I was in the art department. I told Mike Okuda the story I just told you, and he was like, "Get out of here! I don't believe that." And so I went and I got a book of matches, and I have pictures of me opening up the book of matches with my feet and lighting the match, and Mike is like this, watching. Can't believe it. Well, so the story got to Nana, visitor, and she said, "We're going to have the Christmas party in Quarks this year, and you're going to do that for the crew." And it was like all the blood drained out of my face. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. I don't know why I didn't want to do it. Maybe I was afraid I'd fail in front of all those people. I don't want to fail at that because I'm known for it. But you know what saved me was that the fire marshal said no open flames on the set, and I was saved.
How much did you have to pay him for that?
Listen, I would have paid him for that. I was terrified of doing it in front of the whole crew.
I love the idea of a big TV exec bringing someone on a tour, like a lot of suits through the whole studio and just and in here is our art department. There's some wonderfully talented, intelligent people, and there you are, everyone standing around, like their match, like their match.
I would think that's pretty impressive to see that. That's a talent, you know, right?
Were you involved in Star Trek: The Experience in Las Vegas at all?
A little bit. It was actually designed. Herman set up a separate art department on the lot next to ours, where the Star Trek, I have all the blueprints for that place. It's like a roll like this, of blueprints for Star Trek: The Experience. And of course, we were all there. Huh? I should put them on Facebook. Yeah, there's that guy the Star Trek Experience guy. Can't remember his name. Vernon, somebody. That's a great Facebook page. He's got some really great stuff. And I saw that somebody did a 3D walkthrough of the whole Star Trek Experience. It's online. I haven't seen that. It's really fantastic. So, I mean, of course, we provided all the graphics for the bridges and, anything we had done for the show, we provided to that art department. And honest to God, I mean, I went and did the Lost ride a couple of times, and it is. Did you do it? Have you ever done it?
Yeah, I was there. Yeah.
I thought it was just kick-ass, just fantastic.
I've been to Vegas 3 times, and it was like that was the main reason for going. It was
worth it, right? Just beaming in. When they beam you,
not the gambling, not the hookers. It was
all
experience.
Yeah. No, I mean the whole thing when they beam you on board the ship is startling. Yeah.
Yes, I have a great picture of my wife with Rogel was the name of the Ferengi in Quark's bar.
He was good. He would come around and talk to everybody, and
fantastic.
It was very funny. Everyone was really into their roles, and I remember walking by and there was a Klingon there, and I said, I'm going to test this guy, and I yelled at him. I called him a patak, and he got furious. He pulled out his knife. He said, okay, he knows what he's doing.
There's a couple of great videos on YouTube of people secretly recorded videos when they were in the experience. So there's some footage up there, which is
well. If you go online, or I'll send you the link. Actually, if you just type in probably virtual tour Star Trek Experience, you'll be blown away. He's got every set. You could click around the set. You could look all the way around. He's got videos of the rides and everything. It's an incredible document.
One of the Enterprise D is amazing.
Oh yeah, have you seen that?
Yeah.
Have you seen that new one, the virtual tour of the Enterprise D?
Some CG guy did it. It's not of the actual sets. It's a CG representation. It was really good.
It's the start of the program. I think it's possibly been taken down.
It was taken out from YouTube. I think it's still on Vimeo.
Oh really?
But you notice that there's lots of nifty little details. There's one thing, like there is a head, there is a toilet, and it's got 3 seashells, like in Demolition Man.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Well, and you should like this, Doug. And the captains, I'm not sure whether it's the
ready room,
or the lounge. But when you see the models, little models of previous Enterprises, NX-01 right there. So it's sort of retcon.
Oh, is it?
The NX-01 model is now on.
That's really cool.
I love those ships on the wall. I thought they were fantastic. And then when Herman left and turned the reins over to, who was the production designer after that? Richard James. Richard James, for some reason, didn't like those. And he changed it out. And then they just had that wall that had like these mech-looking shapes. Yeah. I didn't care for that. I like the history. Jim Vanover, who was one of the did motion graphics, we were walking between the stages, and those gold ships were leaning up against a dumpster. Oh. They were going to throw them out. And so we picked them up and I have a picture of it on my Facebook page. We picked them up and brought them back to the art department and saved them, basically. And I think Mike gave them to Ron Moore. I think Ron Moore has them. I wanted one. I was hoping Mike would just say, "Oh, go ahead, have one." Sometimes you get that lucky. I mean, when Galactica went down.
More toys. What's that wall?
How freaking awesome is this, lads?
This is amazing.
Oh,
wow.
Cool.
wow.
This is an actual one from the show.
My God.
That was cool.
Fantastic.
What did you make of Enterprise finale?
Yeah.
Finale?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a shame. First of all, killing Trip was.
Yeah.
I like Trip, and I think that even Brandon Braga admits that that was a big mistake, and also they turned it into kind of a TNG episode. I have to say that
I loved them one,
Yeah.
because I'm such a big Next Gen fan. It was great,
Oh, yeah.
but obviously it was upsetting at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the idea of recreating that was great fun for all of us, but it just wasn't a fitting ending for the show.
It would have been good for a standalone, but not for the finale.
Yeah.
It's still on.
Yeah, absolutely. So was it the observation lounge and 10 forward? Were they at least partially rebuilt for that?
Not really. They just. I mean, I'd have to go back and look at it again. It's been a few years. I think it's been 10 years now. And it's been a while since I've watched it. I'm sure that anything that took place in there was they probably just built sections. Every year they would give them less money to do a movie, and so the budgets that they get on like a J.J. Abrams movie is huge compared to what they had on all the the Generation films.
Real movies.
Real movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so a lot of sets would be built out of stuff that we had in storage. And at the Enterprise E bridge, a lot of it was Frankenstein together out of set pieces that we had from other stuff. And for me, it was the first major bridge that wasn't built entirely from scratch. The Enterprise D bridge is a stupendous bridge. I love the Defiant bridge from Deep Space Nine. I laid out every panel on that bridge. I was so excited to lay out Starfleet because I'd been doing Cardassian for, because I laid out ops. On Deep Space Nine, in the pilot, the director wanted the runabout set to be on hydraulics to shake it around because he hated the way the actors used to, and then you would shake the camera too. So they built the runabout on hydraulics, and the thing would gallop. And it would literally wreck the set. I mean, it was the set would be coming apart. And then when you'd see it on screen, it didn't look any better than just the actors doing this and shaking the camera. It was just as good. But, and even though that they had done that and knew that it wasn't any better, when we did Insurrection, was Stuart Baird the director? I don't know. He decided he wanted the bridge to be on hydraulics so they could shake the freaking bridge. And I'm looking at Mike going, that never works. He goes, I know, but that's what he wants, and they're going to give him his way. It didn't look any better than shaking the camera. But the thing that it did do was give Mike Okuda and I a thrill like you wouldn't believe. We were standing on the bridge looking at some of the backlit graphics that were there, and they activated the hydraulics while we were on the bridge. So imagine being on a big bridge like that, and all of a sudden it lurches. Holy Jesus Christ! It's unbelievable. I mean, it's like you're really on a bridge.
Doug, I'm always amazed when I see photos of the model of the TOS Enterprise, and Michael and Denise Okuda put up pictures recently when I went to the Smithsonian and saw it. Yeah. I'm surprised at how big it was because. Huge. In that show, I assumed it must have been this big because it photographs so poorly.
Oh, you know what? That's a beautiful model.
Yeah.
I think it's a spectacular model. It's just that the ability to do green screen and composite, under, not a lot of money and not a lot of time. There are some shots in the show where it looks really great.
How much did it open it up when the CG came in and everyone was able to use more types of Federation ships? Because in the early days of Next Generation, you would see a lot of ships be reused, like, oh, here's another Galaxy class. Oh, look, there's another Excelsior class. Wow, how many types of ships did it have? Because there's only so many models.
Yeah, it's expensive to build those models. Usually expensive.
Yeah. So did that open up a lot with CG?
Oh, hugely. I mean, TNG almost used the Enterprise A. You know that, right?
No.
Yeah. I've got pictures of Bob Justman and Rick Berman and Herman looking at the Enterprise A model in the crate, thinking about using it. To save money. you know.
Yeah.
But thank God.
100 years later or 70 years.
Well, I have no
later.
problem believing that the Enterprise would go for 70 years, because look, how long has the B-52, the Strategic Air Command bombers from the 50s, that Strategic Air Command uses, are still being used today? Today, we're talking 60 years now, and they're going to use them for another 10 years, 70 years. You know, so I actually don't. You know, in I think Search for Spock, the Admiral says something like, Jim, the Enterprise is 12 years old, or, you know, something like 20 years old. I always thought the Enterprise was much older than that. I think they made a mistake there. But military, you know, stuff like aircraft carriers and, you know, and bombers get used for half century or more. So I have no trouble believing that the Enterprise, like the Excelsior, I had no trouble believing the Excelsior was still being used in the time of the Enterprise D. I had no problem with that.
You mentioned that Herman Zimmerman has been, they've used him for designing real ships.
Well, actually, real command centers. He actually designed some strategic situation rooms for the Air Force and stuff like that, because they were Star Trek fans.
Well, I remember there's some admiral with the big Star Trek fan.
But your question about did it open things up? Yeah, hugely. No one should be cursing CG. We tell stories now and give it greater scope than we ever could before. You know, you got a new way to do something? Gimme, I want it. You know, let me play with that. You know, and that's what I did when I moved to visual effects and CG. You know, I wouldn't take anything away.
Back to Memorabilia, you said you auctioned off a lot of things, but was there something that you said, no way, that's not going, and keeping that?
I didn't want to let go of anything, honestly. You know, that's the truth. I loved every bit of it. You know, I still have, you know, I have Uncle Martin's spaceship in my garage. You've seen those things, right?
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
how did you get that?
Actually, it was built by the same guy who built the robot. It's not the original one, but it's like, wow, it's full size. It's in my garage. I love that. It's incredible. You know, I got a piece of the rail here from.
That's brilliant.
So, you know, Trials and Tribulations.
Yeah, you know.
I read there recently. It was emotional when you were flying back with your Oscar through the airport.
Yes, that was hilarious. Did these guys know that story?
No,
I'll tell it if they don't. I had the Oscar. I was going back east, and I brought it with me. I had it in my carry-on, and so I had to put it on the belt to go through X-ray. And it's going through, and I see the woman, the belt is going back and forth, and she's looking at the screen going. And she looks at me and she says, "Is that an Oscar?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she says, "Can I take it out?" And I was like, "Sure." And she opened up the bag and took the Oscar out and held it up at the security gate, and everybody was like, it was a great moment.
Fucking magic
that was
moment.
classic. It really was. It's a fantastic moment. One of those great moments.
Well, we'd love to go on, Doug, but I guess after nearly 3 hours, we better.
Well, you know, the thing is that I honestly feel like I could go on and on and on chatting about this. You know, one of the things that I've seen, and I'm sure that you all know, is there's a shared childhood that we all have. That when we meet each other and we talk to each other, it's like we've known each other for a long time. You know, and I only get that from people who have that shared Star Trek science fiction, you know, thing, that they grew up with it and they love it, and you have an instantaneous rapport. I had it with Mike Okuda and Denise Okuda when we met. We were instantly family, you know, and it's really remarkable. I don't know of any other. I don't know of anything else quite like that.